I wish I could say I remember that day with fondness, but the truth is that the memories are far too bitter. The summer sun cast a warm glow over our sprawling estate, an oasis of affluence surrounded by manicured gardens and glistening fountains. To the outside world, it was a scene of unbridled luxury, but on that day, beneath the surface, everything was anything but idyllic. As I stood among the guests, I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, curious, judgmental, and in some cases, condescending. Each polite smile felt like a reminder of the position I held in this family, the underdog living in the shadow of my golden child sibling, Marcus. He was everything my parents had ever wanted: successful, charismatic, and effortlessly charming. As I glanced over at him, laughing with our father, I felt a familiar pang of inadequacy settle in my chest. I had always known that I was different. While Marcus was the star of our family, I was the supporting character, perpetually relegated to the sidelines. My parents often reminded me of my place, like cruel stage directions in a play where I only had a minor role. But nothing could prepare me for the moment that would change everything. It all began with a toast, a moment meant to honor our family's achievements and strengthen our bonds. My mother stood gracefully, a glass of sparkling champagne in her hand, her voice ringing through the air like a bell that signaled my impending doom. "To Marcus," she started, her words draped in affection. "Our shining star who has made us all so proud, your hard work and dedication inspire us every day." A round of applause erupted, and I felt my cheeks flush. I could barely muster a weak smile. It was a ritual I had grown all too accustomed to, the favorite son receiving accolades while I remained invisible. But that moment of discomfort was only the precursor to a much deeper humiliation. As the applause faded, my father leaned in close to me, a charming smile etched on his face, the kind of smile that always masked his true intentions. "You know, sweetheart," he began, "Marcus has been working on this new project at the firm. He's really making waves." My heart sank. Was this his way of reminding me of my shortcomings? Before I could respond, Marcus chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, come on, Dad. We all know Sam couldn't possibly contribute to something this important," he said, his laughter ringing out like a cruel taunt. The room erupted with laughter, each chuckle a dagger aimed directly at my self-worth. I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. Looking around, I saw my aunts and uncles stifling their giggles. The air was thick with the acrid smell of contempt for what I couldn't bring to the table. In that moment, I felt small enough to slip through the cracks of the floor, invisible to the world. If you've ever been underestimated by family, you'll understand every part of what happened next. I could hear my inner voice whisper, echoing the truth my heart refused to accept. I should have stood up for myself, I should have shouted back. But instead, I stood frozen, trapped in a web of familial loyalty and shame. The party continued, and I desperately sought to blend into the background, hoping to escape the laughter and the whispers. I found solace in the garden, where the vibrant flowers swayed gently in the breeze. Beneath the chaos, they seemed free, unburdened by the chains of expectations. But that serenity was short-lived as my mother's voice echoed from the doorway. "Sam, come back inside. We need your opinions on the new marketing strategy," she said, her tone masked with a false sweetness. The way she said my name, it almost felt like a sneer. It was an order, but more than that, it was a cruel reminder that my input was only valued when it suited her agenda. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling as I stepped back into the suffocating atmosphere of the house. "Oh, you wouldn't understand, dear," she replied dismissively, her back turned to me as she gestured for Marcus to join her. "Just leave it to the professionals." The way she said the professionals struck deep. It wasn't just about the business. It was about everything: my worth, my identity. In that fleeting moment, it dawned on me that I was merely an afterthought in a family that glorified the achievements of one person alone. Everything felt raw, like an open wound that refused to heal. I wished I could merge back with the flowers outside, to escape the judgment and the scrutiny of a family that had made it abundantly clear I was not enough. But escaping was never an option. Destiny has a way of trapping you in the very situations you wish to flee. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, a thought began to take root in my mind, a seed of defiance. Why did I have to be obedient? Why couldn't I rise up and claim my share of the spotlight? There was an ember of strength within me, one that longed to be ignited. And just like that, the dismissive laughter echoed in my ears, the teasing remarks carved into my heart. The humiliation was unbearable, but it also became a catalyst for change. I was tired of being the family's punching bag. The humiliating dismissal was not merely a moment of despair. It was the beginning of a transformation I hadn't yet realized I needed. Little did my family know, while they pushed me further down, they were also creating a force that would eventually rise. The thought of them underestimating me fueled a fire I was determined to stoke. It was time to reclaim my narrative, to reveal who I truly was, a hidden power waiting to be unleashed. As the laughter faded into the evening, I stood there, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and excitement. This was the first chapter of my story, a prologue to a battle that would change everything. The world may have seen me as the underdog, but they had no idea about the storm brewing beneath the surface. And soon, the tides would turn. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my mother's expectations settle over me like a heavy cloak. The suffocating atmosphere of the party stifled my spirit, as laughter and conversation swirled around me like a whirlwind of dread. I had hoped to escape the judgmental glances and veiled insults for just a moment longer, but the thought of disappointing her kept me anchored in place. As I re-entered the room, the party was in full swing. My mother was surrounded by her friends, their laughter ringing out like a symphony of privilege. I could hardly bear to look at Marcus, who was the center of attention, effortlessly weaving tales of his latest business triumphs. I felt invisible as I slipped into the corner of the room, trying to fade into the wallpaper. But then, I overheard a conversation that made my heart race. Two family friends were deep in discussion, their voices low but urgent. "You know, the merger is going to change everything," one said, his tone laced with excitement. "If we sell the firm now, we'll be set for life." "Absolutely," the other replied, glancing around as if to ensure no one overheard. "But they can't find out about Sam's stake. It's too risky. If they knew he was involved, it could ruin everything." The words hit me like a slap across the face. My heart raced as I processed the implications of what I had just heard. My family was planning to sell a company I had invested in, a company they had kept hidden from me all along. I had always felt like a pawn in their game, but this was a betrayal on a whole new level. I felt the walls closing in around me, the laughter of the partygoers fading into a distant hum. My entire life I had been made to feel inadequate, yet here was a secret I had unwittingly been a part of, a hidden power I had never acknowledged. I had a stake in something significant, something that could potentially change my entire life, yet my family chose to exclude me from the very conversation that would determine my future. As the conversation continued just out of sight, I felt anger bubbling within me, a fire igniting in my chest. How could they plan to exploit my investments without even acknowledging my role? I thought of the countless times my parents had brushed aside my ideas, belittling my contributions in favor of Marcus's. I had allowed their condescension to dictate my self-worth for far too long. In that moment, something shifted within me. I was tired of being the underdog, tired of being underestimated and overshadowed. I began to recognize my own worth, not just as a family member but as an individual with insights and abilities that had value. Perhaps it was time to reclaim my narrative, to step out of the shadows and into the light. But as I stood there grappling with this revelation, I felt the familiar grip of fear wrapping around my heart. What if I confronted them? What if I spoke up and they dismissed me yet again? The thought sent a chill down my spine, but I knew that I could no longer remain silent. With my resolve hardening, I moved closer to where the conversation was taking place, trying to catch every word. "They think they can just cut me out. They don't realize the power I hold," I thought, my heart pounding with determination. The implication of my hidden investments lingered in my mind like a sparking fuse, ready to ignite a change. Just then, Marcus's voice broke through the haze of my thoughts. "Let's just make sure Sam doesn't find out until it's too late. He's not smart enough to understand what's at stake here," he laughed, the sound cruel and dismissive. The laughter around him echoed in my ears, filling me with a renewed sense of indignation. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I considered confronting him. But before I could make a move, my mother's voice rang out, calling for everyone's attention. "Everyone, gather around, we have some exciting news," she announced, her tone bright and cheerful. I felt the air shift, all eyes turning toward her. I stood frozen, my heart racing as dread settled in my stomach. What now? We're planning to expand the family's business ventures, she continued, her smile radiant. We've been in talks with some major investors and we expect great things ahead. As applause erupted around me, I felt like an intruder in my own family. I had been excluded from the very plans my mother was celebrating. The realization clawed at my insides, fueling the fire of rage that had begun to burn within me. I caught a glimpse of Marcus's face, radiating pride and confidence as he accepted the praise for our family's achievements. It was a mask of success that I had grown weary of. I could no longer tolerate being the invisible sibling, the one who stood by while they plotted and schemed without me. Enough is enough, I whispered under my breath, the words barely audible but heavy with meaning. I felt a sense of clarity wash over me, and for the first time, I envisioned a future where I was not just a bystander in my family's narrative but an active participant in my destiny. As I made my way through the throng of guests, I could feel the weight of my hidden power surging within me. I was determined to confront Marcus, to demand answers, and to reclaim my right to be involved in the family's plans. My heart pounded with purpose as I approached him, ready to challenge the status quo. Marcus, I said, my voice steady and firm despite the turmoil within, we need to talk. Now, he turned, surprise flickering across his face, but beneath it, I could see the glimmer of arrogance that had always defined him. It was time to break the cycle, to step into the light and claim my place, not just as a member of this family, but as an equal player in the game they thought they controlled. The moment felt electric, charged with potential and the promise of change. And as I stood there ready to confront my brother and my parents, I knew that the path ahead would not be easy. But one thing was certain. I would no longer remain silent. The tides were turning, and I was ready to embrace my newfound strength. The room buzzed with anticipation as my mother continued her announcement, her voice piercing through the cloud of my anxious thoughts. I'm thrilled to announce that we've reached a crucial milestone in our family business. She beamed, her eyes sparkling with pride. I could feel the collective energy shift as the guests perked up, eager to share in the glory of a success that, until now, I had been blissfully unaware of. Thanks to the support of our major investor, we're on the brink of finalizing a merger that will elevate us to new heights. As she spoke, I felt a chill run down my spine. The very idea that my family would celebrate a victory that I had played a part in, albeit unbeknownst to me, was infuriating. My investment, my insights, and my stake in this venture had been reduced to a mere footnote in a story I had never been allowed to tell. The laughter and applause around me felt like daggers, reminding me of my place in this family, always overshadowed, always deemed lesser. With every cheer that followed my mother's proclamation, my resolve solidified. I was done being the silent observer, the invisible child in a room full of giants. The idea of stepping forward, of confronting the very people who had dismissed me for years, filled me with a mix of fear and exhilaration. What if they laughed at me again? What if they insisted I was still the child they had underestimated? But I couldn't allow that fear to dictate my actions any longer. As the clinking of glasses and the cacophony of voices rose, I felt the tremors of a storm brewing within me. I had knowledge now, not only about my investments, but also about the legal implications of their actions. I had researched the ins and outs of the family business, understanding not just my role but the rights that came with it. They thought they could shroud me in ignorance, but I had been preparing for this moment in secret, gathering strength and information like a soldier sharpening their sword. Just then, Marcus sauntered up to the microphone, an arrogant grin plastered across his face. And let's not forget the real reason behind our success, he boomed, his voice dripping with condescension. Without my guidance and vision, none of this would be possible. Laughter erupted from the crowd, and my fists clenched at my sides. They were eating it up, this carefully curated narrative that painted him as the hero while I remained the ghost in the background. I felt the fire inside me ignite. I was fueled by a need not just for acknowledgement but for justice. It was time for me to step out of the shadows. I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I approached the microphone, a sudden determination propelling me forward. The room quieted as people turned to look at me, their expressions a mix of surprise and curiosity. Actually, I'd like to say something, I said, my voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. The murmurs around the room grew louder, a ripple of disbelief sweeping through the crowd. My mother's eyes widened in shock and Marcus's smug expression faltered, replaced with something akin to panic. Sam, this isn't your moment, my mother interjected, her tone sharp. But I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins and I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest. I've been listening to this conversation and I can't sit back any longer while my contributions are ignored. I've invested in this company. I hold a stake in its future and I deserve to be part of the discussions that shape it. The words spilled out of me, each one laced with the years of frustration and humiliation I had endured. A heavy silence fell over the crowd and I could see the shock etched on their faces. My mother's mouth opened in protest, but I didn't give her the chance to interrupt. For too long, I've let you all define my worth. You've treated me like a child who knows nothing, but I've been watching, learning, and preparing for this moment. My gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of distant relatives and family friends who had witnessed my struggle. There was a flicker of respect in a few of their eyes and it fueled my fire. You underestimate me at your own risk. I am not just Sam, the quiet one in the corner. I am a key player in this family business, and it's time you recognized that. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could see Marcus's face contorting with anger and disbelief. You think you can just waltz in and claim your piece of the pie? You're not qualified to make decisions here, he snapped, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm more qualified than you realize, I shot back, feeling emboldened by the truth I held. While you've been busy flaunting your so-called achievements, I've been delving into the company's operations, uncovering what you've all tried to hide from me. You think I don't know the legal implications of this merger? You have no idea what I'm capable of. A murmur spread through the crowd, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. I could see my mother's eyes narrow, a sign that she was about to intervene, but I pressed on, determined to seize this opportunity. I've been an investor in this company and my insights matter. It's time for me to step into a role that reflects my contributions, not just my familial ties. Suddenly, the door swung open and a figure stepped inside, a stranger in a tailored suit holding a briefcase. The atmosphere shifted once more as all eyes turned toward this newcomer. "Excuse me," he said, his voice authoritative. "I'm here to discuss the merger and the implications of the investment structure. I believe we need to address the stake that Sam holds in this company." The revelation of this mysterious authority brought a wave of confusion and tension as I processed this unexpected twist. My heart raced and I could see the fear etched on my family's faces. The very gravity of the situation began to dawn on everyone in the room. The stranger continued, "I have documents that confirm Sam's involvement and contributions to the company's operations. This merger cannot proceed without acknowledging his stake, and I suggest we resolve this issue before moving forward." The weight of that moment settled over me like a shroud. My family's secret was laid bare, and the power dynamics I had fought against were shifting beneath my feet. I felt a surge of triumph mixed with disbelief. As murmurs of confusion and intrigue spread through the crowd, I knew the confrontation I had imagined was about to unfold, but now it would be backed by indisputable facts and undeniable authority. My journey was shifting from one of silence to one of empowerment, and I was ready to reclaim not only my voice but my rightful place in this family and the company we had built. With the stranger's arrival, the confrontation loomed on the horizon, and I braced myself for the battle ahead. This was just the beginning. As I stood at the microphone, the weight of my family's expectations hung heavy in the air. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the faint clinking of glasses as the crowd awaited my next words. I could see the disbelief on their faces, the shock that I had dared to speak up. But I wasn't backing down. I had come too far and fought too hard for my voice to be silenced again. "Let's not forget," I continued, my voice steady despite the tremors of adrenaline coursing through me, "that I've been a part of this company longer than anyone here realizes. While you all celebrated, I've been the one funding our projects, investing in our future. I hold the majority stake in this business and I deserve to be here, acknowledged and respected." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I could see my mother's face pale in horror. Marcus's smug grin faded, replaced by an expression of outright disbelief. The tension in the room shifted, morphing into something palpable like the calm before a storm. "Sam, you're mistaken," my mother finally managed, her voice quaking slightly. "You couldn't possibly understand the complexities of running this business. But her words felt empty, devoid of the authority they once held. I had spent countless hours researching, learning, and preparing for this moment. I had become more than just the overlooked child. I had transformed into a knowledgeable adult ready to claim my rightful place. But before I could respond, a new voice cut through the tension, resonating with authority. Actually, she's quite right. The room turned to see a tall figure approaching, Mr. Johnson, the family's major investor. He strode confidently to the front, his presence commanding respect. I didn't just invest in your family's business, I invested in Sam's vision. She's been the driving force behind many of our recent projects, something your family has been blissfully unaware of. The audience erupted in murmurs, confusion swirling like a tempest. My heart raced as I realized the implications of his words. I wasn't just a silent partner, I was the backbone of the company, the one whose insights had been guiding its success. I could see my mother's facade crumbling, her carefully constructed narrative of family superiority unraveling before her eyes. "Mr. Johnson," I said, turning to him, "thank you for your support. It means more than you know." As I spoke, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the underestimated child, I was a key player in this game. Our family business has thrived because I have been working behind the scenes while you all have been busy ignoring my contributions. "Sam, please," Marcus interjected, stepping forward, desperation masking his arrogance. "You don't know what you're saying, you're just a kid with dreams." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in power. "A kid?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You've called me that for far too long. But today, I'm no longer just the kid in the family. I'm the owner of this business, the one who has been funding your lavish lifestyle without your knowledge. I've been the one keeping this family afloat while you all dismissed me as inconsequential." The room was silent again, the reality of my words sinking in. I could see the realization wash over the guests, the understanding that the narrative they had accepted for so long was a facade. My family's dynamic was shifting, and I was no longer the invisible child. I was the storm that would change everything. "Sam," my mother said, her voice trembling, "this isn't how we handle family matters." But her words felt weak, almost pleading. The power had shifted, and she could no longer control the narrative. "Family matters?" I laughed, a sound tinged with disbelief. "You've treated me like a stranger in my own home, a ghost who has no stake in our legacy. Well, I'm here to reclaim my place and redefine what family means. Respect, acknowledgement, and equality, those are the foundations of a true family." Mr. Johnson nodded in agreement, stepping back slightly to let me take center stage. "I've always believed in Sam's potential, and I think it's time the rest of your family does too. She's proven her worth, and it's time for you all to recognize what she brings to the table." My mother's eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but she found none. The guests began to murmur their approval, some even nodding in agreement. I could feel the tide turning, the power dynamic irrevocably altered. "From this moment on," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction, "I will no longer be silent. I will take my rightful place in this family and in this business. I will ensure that my contributions are valued and that my voice is heard. If you cannot accept that, then perhaps it's time for us to reevaluate what it means to be a family." With those final words, I stepped back from the microphone, a wave of relief washing over me. I had done it. I had reclaimed my narrative, my power. The applause that followed felt like a warm embrace, wrapping around me in a way that my family had never done. In that moment, I realized that I had not only uncovered my hidden wealth but had also exposed the true nature of my family's dynamics. The facade of their superiority had crumbled, and I stood tall, ready to forge a new path. As I glanced around the room, I saw a mix of shock and admiration in the faces of my family and guests. The air was charged with a new energy, one of respect and acknowledgement. I had transformed the narrative from one of humiliation to one of empowerment. In the days that followed, my relationship with my family began to shift. There were difficult conversations, tears, and moments of vulnerability. But through it all, I remained steadfast in my resolve. I had earned my place, and I would no longer allow anyone to undermine my worth. "Sam," my mother said during one of our talks, her voice tinged with regret, "I wish I had seen your potential sooner. I've been so focused on the image of our family that I forgot the importance of nurturing each member's strengths." "It's never too late to change, Mom," I replied gently, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for us all. We can redefine what it means to be a family, built on respect and equality. And so, as I stood at the precipice of this new beginning, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had emerged from the shadows into the light, no longer just a silent observer, but an empowered individual ready to shape my destiny. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more stories where the underdog finally gets the justice they deserve.